apparently on Saturday, June 14th. They don't understand, many of them. I think President Trump's walking right into a trap. He might even be walking into a trap when it comes to Iran, not to mention the trap being set for him, I think, here in America, related to the military, the Marines, the National Guard, whatnot, in California. But what is all this about in California, folks? Have you seen the president of the Senate in Mexico holding up a map? Hey, saying this was our land. You guys took it. So we'll build the wall. I told President Trump in his first term, we'll build the wall. We'll build it to there, taking Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California, Utah, all these states, right? Is this about a gigantic Hegelian dialectic process? Big word. I talked about it on radio today. I've talked about it for decades. Thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea. And you get sides to fight, and then you offer up a solution. You remember the Fabian window? I've talked about that for so many years. Created by George Bernard Shaw in 1910. I'm going to talk about that tonight. I want to roll for you about 20 minutes of my monologue from radio today. There's no reason for me to do it again. But it's so important that it needs to be heard tonight. So instead of me doing it, I'm going to just roll my own monologue from radio today. And I'm going to explain to you what virtually very few people understand. They watch the news, but they have no idea what they're looking at and how this is highly orchestrated. Or maybe they do realize it's highly orchestrated, but do they realize why it's been orchestrated? What's the end game? What's the goal? Let me explain it to you. So if you want your family and friends to understand what's happening so they're not deceived, again, you might want to text, tweet, email, Facebook, Getter, True Social, whatever it is you do, and tell them to tune in to Worldview Tube right now. Because I'm going to go to this 20-minute monologue. And then I'm going to go to Patrick Wood. I'm going to play some videos. And I'm going to explain how this all fits in with Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, the United Nations, technocracy, using technology to control people, social credit scores, 15-minute cities, which some now are calling freedom cities, how it fits in with digital currency, how it fits in with minerals, land, all being used as hard assets to back currencies, tokenizing the hard assets of the world on a ledger, how it all fits together. A North American Union. Canada is a 51st state. Mexico's saying what they are. What's going on here, folks? Do you understand? I want you to understand. I really do. Now, before I go to all that, while you're tweeting and texting and emailing and Getter and True Social to all your family and friends, I want to go to a clip of President Trump real quick on Iran. Because we're getting word tonight, a lot of, I guess the embassy in Baghdad's being told to clean out. We're getting these reports. I can't validate them, but we're following them. But we are hearing that President Trump, and I'm going to show you, gave an interview about Iran. I mean, there's so many things going on from in America, outside America, related to our military, Iran. Voices telling President Trump, you need to strike Iran with Israel. Voices saying, no, we don't want to go to war. Do you realize the terror cells they likely have here? Biological chemicals? That's what we've been saying here for a long time. But here's what President Trump just said about a meeting, I guess at Camp David with the generals. Isn't that interesting? I don't think President Trump's a big fan of Camp David. But he flew over there apparently and had a meeting with a bunch of generals. Now that's interesting. Why do they have to do that? Are they concerned about major leaks? So they wanted to have a more controlled meeting at Camp David? Listen to what he had to say because it tells us a lot where we may be going. Here we go.
So Camp David, you were just there, and you with the generals and the admirals and Marco Rubio. What were you talking about?
Well, I can't tell you exactly, but it was a pleasure. Without discussing anything, look, we had a meeting, a very important meeting, and really talked about many subjects.
Iran, Ukraine,
well, one of
Russia.
them were, all of that. It's all big topics, especially when you have generals and admirals.
Do you think you're going to be able to stop Iran from enriching its nuclear?
I don't know. I did think so, and I'm getting more and more less confident about it. They seem to be delaying, and I think that's a shame. But I'm less confident now than I would have been a couple of months ago. Something happened to them. but I am much less confident of a deal being made. I would have said a deal would be made.
Something happened to them? Like,
No, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I
Like
really,
China
I
talked them
have
out of it?
instincts about things.
you think China talked them out of it?
No, I don't think China has anything to do with it. I just think maybe they don't want to make a deal. What can I say? And maybe they do.
So what does that
There's
mean?
nothing final.
What happens then?
Well, if they don't make a deal, they're not going to have a nuclear weapon.
Right.
If they do make a deal, they're not going to have a nuclear weapon too, but they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. So it's not going to matter from that standpoint. But it would be nicer to do it without warfare, without people dying.
Yeah.
It's so much nicer to do it. But I don't think I see the same level of enthusiasm for them to make a deal. I think I think they would make a mistake, but we'll see. I guess time will tell.
Wow. So there you go. He's not very hopeful about Iran, which is not good. The question is, will America go with Israel to strike Iran? And what will that mean for us? Well, we've warned what that will mean for us. Are we going to let Israel go it alone? I don't know. Again, there are competing voices in the White House on this one. Pray for President Trump. Pray that he has wisdom and discernment, folks, because it impacts every one of us. But sadly, most Americans, again, are checked out on these issues, thinking that, oh, that's over there. Oh, trust me. Hezbollah, Iran's team, they're not just over there. They are here. I can promise you that. Well, let's move on to our main topic tonight, and that is the crisis, the conflict, thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, the conflict that is moving America toward what may be a North American Union, moving America maybe toward the idea of a regional currency. What is this really all about? Again, here is about a 20-minute monologue from my radio show today at 1 o'clock Central. I want to play it, and you might want to get a pen and paper and take notes. And then after that, we're going to go to Patrick Wood, and then we're going to go to Alex Newman. Folks, this is something you're probably not going to get in a lot of other places, but it helps you put the puzzle pieces together. Because trust me, the globalists have been telegraphing and telling us what it is they want to do. Question is, have we been listening? Here, yes, we have been. You have been. But here we are tonight on June 11th, 2025, with more of an understanding as the crisis and chaos is unfolding in America, but it is planned chaos. Question is, what's the manufactured crisis supposed to bring about? Here's my monologue, then we'll go to Patrick Wood and Alex Newman. Hegelian dialectic process. Oh no, don't let the eyes roll back in your head here. Hegelian dialectic process, conflict, that's all it means. Thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, conflicting with each other in order to bring about a third way or a third option. In other words, to get the people to go where they otherwise would never go. What is World War III really all about? Is it about regime change? Probably. Getting rid of Putin, who doesn't want to go along with all the New World Order, LGBTQ, green agenda? Probably. Is it also about nation building? A region? Minerals? President Trump came out today with a tweet that he's firmed up a deal with China. Apparently it has to do with minerals from China up front. So much seems to be about getting hard assets. Was it about 2010 when I did the radio show telling you guys I thought we were headed toward hard assets, land, and what's under the land to be the basis for a global currency, or at least something to back up our own currency, which is why the federal government was taking up so much federal state land and federalizing it. 2010, I think it was, we looked up a few weeks ago, that radio show in our vault. It doesn't take a lot to know that. You just got to be thinking, well, this fiat currency eventually is going to implode, so you got to go to something, but no one's going to trust it if it doesn't have a hard backing, right? Hard assets. And now President Trump's cutting a deal with China. They're going to provide minerals up front. Is Russia and World War III, is that about them wanting to get a hold of minerals in China or in Russia, but also getting rid of Putin for regime change, for a part of maybe a different region as we go toward 10 world regions as promoted by the European Commission? the Club of Rome, the UN? Isn't that what Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 has been about? Grabbing up all the world's resources in the name of environmentalism. So the people who want to create a new system to replace the failing Federal Reserve System have a way to continue to enslave people on a global scale and benefit from their work, their labor. Isn't at the core of everything really that work, labor? And so you make everybody a part of the system and you become their slave. And whatever work you do, they tokenize your assets, your property, your values. By the way, isn't that what Klaus Schwab said? By 2030, you'll own nothing and be happy? What if the conflict with Mexico right now, and that's really who's helping fund this. Federalists had a great piece out yesterday on how Mexico has a lot to answer for helping to push this these riots in California. They're waving the Mexican flags like crazy there. Yesterday, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, in the Oval Office, standing next to the Resolute desk at which President Trump was sitting, greatly chided the president of Mexico for encouraging these riots. Now, why would the president of Mexico do that? Who would be encouraging the president of Mexico to do that? Who is really pushing this agenda, folks? We have several members of Congress, both in the House and the Senate, calling for investigations into this guy by the last name of Singham, who they say may be funding this, who has reported ties back to the CCP, some guy that's close to being a billionaire. Great testimony today on this, by the way, by Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'll play that on Brannon House Live tonight. Who are some of the other folks, maybe in the shadows, that are funding these groups and pushing for this conflict? Because again, thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, let people clash, and then you come up with a third option or the solution to the problem that's been manufactured, the manufactured crisis. Remember in 2020, early 2020, I did the presentation on, what was it, ID 2020 or ID 2030? I can't remember what it was called, but it was a conference at the United Nations about how everyone needs to get chipped, basically. That's part of Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. Remember, it's goal 16.9 in the global goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. That we'll all be tagged like cattle. And the idea was we could do this for banking. You had the Bank for International Settlements behind it, which is the central bank of central bankers. You had the United Nations behind it. You had all kinds of globalist groups and organizations, big ones, behind this idea of getting everybody tagged. And it was said, remember in 2020 when we covered that with you guys one night on TV during the COVID pandemic lockdowns, that this would be used to deal with cross-border travel. So how do you get everybody to agree to be tagged? Well, you have a failing currency. Box checked, failing U.S. currency due to debt, fiat currency backed by nothing. Wait a minute, what happened to going into the Fort Knox? See if the gold is there. Oh, that didn't happen, did it? Congressman Massey from Kentucky is offering up legislation to go into Fort Knox. We'll see where that goes. Auditing the Fed, that's never happened. I don't think it ever will. But they have to replace the failing system with something else. The failing dollar. New. By the way, there's also legislation pending. New legislation pending on how we're going to take all these cryptocurrencies and stable coins and bring them under federal control and standards. They're moving for something. They may not call it a central bank digital currency. Maybe they'll call it something else. Maybe the central bank, as we know, it won't even exist anymore. But I kind of think it will. Maybe they'll just decide, you know what, we thought we could go without the central bank digital currency, but we have no choice. We have to go to it anyway. At least they took that controversy off the table for a while because we were told that wasn't going to happen. But maybe that's just a ruse. But back to why we're seeing this in California with Mexico pushing it. I think it's part of the Hegelian dialectic. Have you guys seen the president of the Senate in Mexico? Now, I'm pretty sure this was in Spanish. And I got a D in high school Spanish, so I can't help you here. Let's see what he says here. Let's see if this is English or Spanish, guys. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. He says, when President-elect Donald Trump said oh, I got to go slower, who was 16 days away from taking office, this is the president of the Senate in Mexico, by the way, for the first time as president, about to assume the role. And I said, yes, we'll build the wall. Yes, we'll pay for it, but we'll do it according to the map of Mexico from 1830. Now, folks, those of you listening on radio today, he's holding up a map and saying, we're going to build the wall from the map of 1830, which means that Mexico takes over pretty much all of Texas and Arizona and New Mexico and California. And I think you got Utah in there. Wait a minute, that sounds like La Raza, the race, the group La Raza, the race. So he says, we'll do it based on that map. He said, this is what the United States was in 1830, and this was part of Mexico. It wasn't all Mexico. If you can see, maybe a third, at least a quarter of the North American territory was part of Mexico until 1846. We were stripped of these territories. We were settled there before. The nation, now known as the United States. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, that's it, Guadalupe Hidalgo, establishes rights for the people settled in those territories which were not respected. The city of Nuevo Laredo. Laredo was a Mexican city. Laredo. Isn't there a John Wayne movie? I love that John Wayne movie. And the city of Nuevo Laredo was formed by the Mexicans who lived in Laredo and didn't want to stay on the United States side and come over to what is now national territory. With this geography, how can they talk about liberating Los Angeles and California? The United States government? Liberate them from whom? The Mexican men and women who are settled in that place are settled in what has always been their homeland. Names don't lie. The most spoken language in Los Angeles is Spanish. Don't need to speak English to be in Los Angeles. And here we are in the current situation. This is part of the United States, yes. The United States government has the right to implement whatever immigration measures it deems appropriate, certainly. But they have no right to violate the dignity of migrants. They have no right to separate families. They have no right to subject them to suffering, persecution, or harassment. They have no right to break the law that the United States government and the people of the United States set themselves. Now, with that, what does this sound like to you? What does this sound like to you, folks? Think Hegelian dialectic process. Didn't we hear a few months ago President Trump talking about, and has said it over and over, making Canada our 51st state? And there was even a map shown or talked about Canada, Mexico, Greenland, maybe even Panama. But certainly Mexico, America, and Canada. Maybe this is where we should go. Well, that would make sense from a standpoint of natural resources to now back your North American currency, which the president of Mexico at the time, Vicente Fox, told Larry King was in the works. Down the road, he said to Larry King when he was meeting with George W. Bush. It's down the road, but that's later. The Amero, a North American currency. What are you going to back it with? Hard assets, land, minerals, oil, natural gas, hydroelectricity, labor, people. And then what are you going to? And then how are you going to deal with these people saying, this was our land, we want it back. And if we don't get it back, we're going to be rioting. No justice, no peace kind of thing. So what do? You have a conflict. So the idea has already been put out there, North American Union, for years, something we've been talking about. My friend, the late Phyllis Schlafly, and I talked about, whatever, right? President Trump brings up this idea. We're going, what is that about? Sounds like the technocracy of the 1930s that Patrick Wood was educating us about. And now we have all of a sudden, voila, conflict in California with Mexican flags waving like crazy. And billionaires supposedly funding it, and NGOs, many of those, of course, tie back to the United Nations, who wants what? World government, and has already done what? Divided the world into 10 regions. So maybe this conflict is about creating a crisis, and then we negotiate a solution to the manufactured crisis, which is, all right, tell you what. Why don't we merge together as 3 nations? Why don't we get everybody biochipped, 16.9 of the Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and everybody can come back and forth, cross-border crossing. We can keep our North American highway and interstate they all have been talking about, and problem solved, life goes on. And you can keep your housekeeper, by the way. She ain't going anywhere. I don't know. We'll talk about this more on the other side. Don't go away. Glad you're with us, Worldview Radio, website worldviewradio.com. Now, I've been telling you guys for so many years, if you want to understand the globalist and what they're doing, you have to understand the Hegelian dialectic process. And I've shown you the Fabian window. George Bernard Shaw developed the Fabian window, I think about 1910 off the top of my head. Been a while since I've talked about this. And of course, you have the man in the red coat and the guy in the green coat, and they're banging with anvils or with hammers on a hot globe that's on an anvil. And the guy in the green coat is holding this hot globe that's just come out of the fire with a pair of tongs on the anvil while they bang it with hammers. And at the top, it says, remold it nearer to the heart's desire. To the far left, you have a guy in a purple coat with a bellow, blowing air, oxygen onto the fire to make it bigger. Take a crisis and you make it bigger. You blow life, air, wind, oxygen. You give it oxygen, give it more oxygen to make the fire bigger. And at the bottom of the window are the Fabians on their knees, praying to a stack of Fabian books. George Bernard Shaw on the far left, standing, clapping, kind of mocking them because he wanted this all to be known. Everybody should know about this. This is a great idea. They're like, be quiet. And right above the hot earth that's on fire is the wolf in sheep's clothing. Look at that, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Be very careful, folks, of the wolf in sheep's clothing. Be very careful of the religion that is being used. Wolves in sheep's clothing. This is the globalist. They tell you what they're going to do, but the question is, do people listen? Do they pay attention? The Hegelian dialectic, the change comes from the conflict. Saul Alinsky knew that. All of the conflicts that are going on now, folks, they're all, most of them, created, manipulated, and developed on purpose. And if our own economic system, which was built really now after we stripped the gold window and closed that, Nixon, got the Federal Reserve 1913 with a currency now backed by nothing really but consumer confidence. That all eventually had to unravel, but they knew that. They knew that. And so they were planning for a new system. And isn't that what the technocrats, and this is really all about, and Palantir and Peter Thiel talking about the option is either Antichrist or Armageddon, unless we have another system. That's what it's all about, folks. And you're just tagged cattle in the system. They knew they eventually had to go to this. Now they're manufacturing crises or what are naturally occurring from their bad decisions. Ideas have consequences. They're now going to escalate the crises until the people tire and go where they would never otherwise go without the crisis. Mexico says, we want all that land. That was ours. No Justice, no peace. American corporations say we need that cheap labor. Americans say, well, we've had these people in our church, in our communities. Can't just rip them out of here. They go to our schools. We know their kids. Some of them have even been paying taxes. So you get all the emotion going, and then you say, okay, here's a solution. Let's merge the three nations together. Let's go to one currency, back it with all of our minerals and assets, have a great reset. Is that what's going on here? Oh, by the way, everybody's got to get biochips so we know who's coming and going, and people aren't milking the system and hitting it 2 or 3 times with benefits, which, by the way, Doge has told us that's going on. Well, that's very convenient for Doge to tell us all that. Now we realize how bad the corruption is, that people are angry. We want that to end. Well, we can get all that to end. Everybody's just got to get biochips. Joining me now is Patrick Wood of Technocracy.news, Technocracy.news. All right, you sent me a video today, and I've watched almost all of it. Fascinating video. Technocracy, the first ever full-length professional documentary on the agenda, their vision, your future. I want to play a little bit of this, and then we'll have you respond. Sound good?
Cool.
All right, let's do it. Here we go, guys, in the control room.
Fantastic parable about the dehumanization of human beings. In the negative utopia described in my story, man has been subordinated to his own inventions. Science, technology, social organization, these things have ceased to serve man. They have become his masters.
Aldous Huxley's novel portrays a dystopian future under the dictatorship of a world state, where every aspect of human life is controlled, from laboratory creation to the grave. He described the story as fantasy, but later wrote, "The prophecies made in 1931 are coming true much sooner than I thought they would. The nightmare of total organization has emerged and is now awaiting us, just around the next corner."
With the rise of brain-computer interfaces and biometric sensors and so forth, all the bodies, all the brains would be connected together to a network, and you won't be able to survive if you're disconnected from the net.
All life on Earth is going to be radically changed.
It's a fusion of the physical, the digital, and the biological world. It's changing who we are.
These people have gotten to the point now where they are openly anti-human.
Everything will be monitored. The environmental consequences of every human action.
They cannot happen without digital ID.
Once the digital ID is in place, it's game over for humanity.
The ideology of a world dictated through science is deep-rooted. Almost a century ago, a movement was established in the United States, preaching that the population should be governed by an elite of selected experts, scientists, and academics, rather than democratically elected politicians. They called it technocracy.
These engineers and scientists from Columbia University promoted what they thought was going to be the replacement for capitalism and free enterprise. It's not going to be price-based economic system. It's going to be based on resources and energy, control over energy. They thought that science was the answer for everything. They didn't have any spiritual bone at all. You know, they were very mechanistic in their thinking.
The definition was clear.
Technocracy is the science of social engineering, the scientific operation of the entire social mechanism to produce and distribute goods and services to the entire population.
The movement was short-lived, but the principle never died. As we'll demonstrate, a stranglehold on policy and resources has always been the ambition of the powerful oligarchs behind many of today's world institutions.
It seems to me that there's a very strong drift in the direction of globalization, of the ultimate centralization of control in the hands of unelected officials at supranational organizations. The lust to control other human beings is a story as old as time.
They want all of the resources of the world in their pocket. They do not want you and me to have anything. It's in writing all over the World Economic Forum's website. By 2030, you will own nothing and be happy. That's an oxymoron. If you don't have anything in your name, you ain't going to be happy about it.
The World Economic Forum may have called that infamous phrase a prediction, but it translates as a statement of intent on behalf of its global power brokers.
The bigger picture is that an attempt is underway now to collapse liberal democracy and replace it with global technocracy. What I call an omni-war is now underway, which is to say that the transnational ruling class is literally, it's not a metaphor, is literally at war with the rest of humanity and has weaponized everything that it can.
This is a coup. They can remove the power from the parliament and the legislative branch and consolidate it into a monetary system which has complete control.
That control is now entirely achievable because the would-be controllers finally have the tools to execute it. Total surveillance, artificial intelligence, digital IDs, and central bank digital currencies.
All right, let's stop right there. The ability to control everything. Now, I had you on my radio show today at 1 o'clock Central, and I talked about the Hegelian dialectic process. Thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, things colliding, fighting. And you manufacture those crises so that you get people to go to a third option that they would not go to without their own, without being pushed there. It's like George McGregor Burns, who I quote all the time, a globalist, wrote the book in 1984, The Power to Lead. The founding fathers have been too shrewd for us, too smart. A frail tinkering and bridges won't get the job done. We'll never get the people to go where we want them to go without a stupendous national crisis. And we see all kinds of crises. We went through some of them today. Terrorism, 9/11, drug crisis, immigration crisis, financial crisis, right? Nonstop crises. But I have to wonder, as I propose to you today, if some of this isn't what's going on in California, manufactured by powerful people with lots of money, in order to merge us together into a North American union. Because how else can you get us all to agree to that? And then you have an economic crisis. And now you can start controlling everyone and everything and use the crisis and all the disruption and riots and chaos to even pitch the idea of freedom cities. Are you sick and tired of the riots, the troublemakers, the problems? We can control them if everybody gets a biometric, which is called for in 16.9 of Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. And now we can have everybody crossing back and forth over the border with their biometrics. This video shows how this is all very possible. But you and I discussed how back in the 1930s, they already had the plan of a North American Union. Right, Patrick? The technocrats did?
They did, undoubtedly. It was all, in fact, it was all over their, even their book that was, this was published in 1934.
Yep.
The Technocracy Study Course. Just look at the cover. There it is. Just, you know, it's unmistakable. That was the North American Technate. You just, you know, I saw some media outlets grab that picture when Trump was talking about, you know, merging Canada and Panama, et cetera. Some outlets got that picture off of Google, posted it up. They didn't have a clue where it came from in the first place. They just put it up and said, well, here's the plan, folks. We're going to have Canada as the first 51st state. We're going to have Panama, and we're going to have Mexico probably in the thing as well, and maybe Greenland.
Well, remember this. Joe Biden, Declaration of North America, 2023, not too long ago, right? President Trump,
Yes.
Canada could become the 51st state. Don Jr. and reps landing in Greenland. Panama Canal belongs to us. Panama Canal is considered a vital national asset for the United States.
Mm-hmm.
We got technocracy. And there you go. The technate of America.
Yeah, exactly.
It all, and of course, then today we have the president of the Senate of Mexico talking about, we talked about building the wall, and we're going to take Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and California. Well, so thesis, antithesis, idea, opposite idea, fight, fight, fight. And now the solution is, let's just do this. We all are in trouble financially. We all have terrorism in our countries. We have the drug trade, all these things. Why don't we just all come together and build, instead of a 15-minute city, build a freedom block of America, Canada, and Mexico? I mean, I think we're being played to some degree, and I think a lot of this is orchestrated. Now, I don't know how much President Trump knows. I really don't. I mean, I think they played him with COVID. I think he knows that now. I think Ronald Reagan was played largely. Ronald Reagan was surrounded by a bunch of George H.W. Bush globalists, I think. So why would we think that Jimmy Carter was played? Why would we think that Donald Trump doesn't have people around him playing him? He didn't even know that drones were going after Putin's helicopter, right? So the press told him. Why are they keeping him in the dark? Is this what you do when you try to keep people off balance, right? So the question is, does Donald Trump know what it is these people are doing? Or does he just see this from a good standpoint of national security, energy, and backing our collapsing dollar and fighting the BRICS banking system? If I had to guess tonight, I would say Donald Trump doesn't know the things you and I know, and he's being led down a path that people way above him, that he maybe doesn't even know about, that have often been called the power elite, have been planning for over 100 years, or about 100 years, since 1913 at least. What say you?
I think that's a good analysis. I've said for some time that the president is irrelevant on one hand. He's elected, of course. There's all the dissension and the arguments, political arguments before the election. It got him to where he is right now. But the presidents in the past have not been the substantive movers and shakers behind the scene. I think we're going to see this as we go on, but you're not going to find your answer looking to Trump at this point, whatever the case is. You should always look behind the scenes and figure out who are the actors that are moving blocks of things around to make things happen. And I don't think it's Trump at this point.
Who do you think it is?
Well, we know that the CIA is behind a lot of stuff. We know the military industrial complex is behind a lot of stuff. They're all chock full of technocrats, by the way. They're all unelected. They're unaccountable by and large. And so we see the military standing behind so many projects, even Operation Warp Speed, for instance. The manufacture of the vaccines were done by the military. Not at there was a contract for the pharma companies to make vaccines, but it was all orchestrated by the military in the first place. Well, that was not brought out at first. People thought, well, it's going to be they're going to use the military to distribute the shots instead of using FedEx or UPS or whatever, right, or Amazon. But there was a big story behind that where the military was involved from the get-go with the whole thing from the development of the virus in the first place to the development of the solution to the virus. So, we see the CIA even now behind Palantir, for instance. Palantir was a creation of the CIA in the early 2000s. The Palantir, that's Peter Thiel's firm. Palantir was basically just a creation of the CIA. They put money into the company, and they provided the architecture that they wanted to build. They let them run wild with it at that point, but that was the only entity, the only client that Palantir had for some years. So at this point, you can see the same threat is coming at us with, for instance, Palantir now being selected to be the master organizer of data for the government.
And to create a file in every American. And if you were to use that to create a file in every American, couldn't you use that as their biometrics and going back and forth between Canada and America, America and Mexico? Yes. I mean, this would solve a lot of problems in the minds of, Americans when it's pitched to them for people, maybe voter fraud, down to people double dipping on their entitlement programs, which they're not entitled to, but that's what they call them.
Yes.
I mean, there's all kinds of things, right? Out of the chaos comes the science. And that's interesting because you and I have discussed that, right? Remember this book?
Yes.
Science versus Chaos by Howard Scott, Technocracy, Inc. That was back in 1933, right?
Yeah.
And isn't that what's happening? They're using the chaos, and then they're going to offer up behavioral sciences as the solution.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly so. This has been happening for a long time, for sure. We saw it, and we talked about 9/11 and how that played into the whole reformation of the intelligence community in America. We saw that it produced the Patriot Act that's still with us today. They said, well, we have a war against terrorism now. They haven't hardly caught any terrorists in the meantime, but nevertheless, the entire population is subject to search and seizure at any point at this point. So, the problem, reaction, solution, it can be used anywhere in any situation to achieve their agenda.
Now, I know that they've tried to use climate change as the big boogeyman. When we come back from this break, I want to ask you if they have to switch directions on that. Because a lot of people aren't buying into the climate change hoax. So is this why they're switching to terrorism, to pandemics, financial collapse? Let's talk about that on the other side. My guest is Patrick Wood of Technocracy.news. Technocracy.news. All right? Now, again, folks, if you appreciate all we're doing and putting out to you free of charge, we need your support. Consider going, will you? Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com, so we can keep all this great information going. Thank you for that. We'll be right back after this break. Don't go away.
I'll tell you one little quick story. We had a Worldview Weekend client who lived in California, lost their house, very wealthy guy. He didn't use Bitcoin. He came over here, drove to Arizona with $286,000 worth of his gold because he had no money and no house available. His bank was shut down because he couldn't have access to his bank account.
Was this during the fire? Was this during the fires?
During the fire. Didn't have his driver's license. He lost it. The state wouldn't give him a new license because he had no active mailing address. Real mess. So he came to Arizona to buy a house. He's moving everything over. He said, the only thing I got in my possession that I can get liquid with right now is my gold. I gave him a check for $286,000, and guess what? I didn't need his social, his driver's license. Sort of smiled, and I said, I know you and Brannon talked about how this worked, but boy, this is great. I feel good. I got my money. Nobody bothered me, and I'm protected, and it's private.
Just simply go to worldviewgold.com, fill out the form, worldviewgold.com.
Looking for a trusted source to understand today's world through a Christian worldview? Worldview Tube is built on the 35 years of Worldview books, columns, research, and high-profile interviews of Brannon Howse. Want to know more about Worldview Tube, its founder, history, team, and mission? Visit worldviewtube.com/about. That's worldviewtube.com/about. Worldview Tube is your source for understanding the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
And welcome back. Glad you are with us. Joining me is Patrick Wood of Technocracy.news. Patrick, I know that they want to make this the boogeyman to be global warming, to get everybody to surrender their rights. I think there's too much science out there that shows that there is not man-made apocalyptic global warming. So, are they going to stay on that one, or are they going to switch to pandemics, viruses, plagues, financial collapse, World War III, terrorism, biological weapons? Now, those things have a great way of getting people to move and act, not global warming. I think they're going to have to do better than that. Are they willing to change their course? And is that why we saw the coronavirus, the pandemic?
Trend changing in 2020 when all of the universities who were pumping out the studies saying that the polar ice caps are going to melt and we're all going to die, the seas are going to rise. All these people in universities around the world, especially in England, all of a sudden they all flip-flopped over into the COVID area to produce studies now supporting COVID. Well, that was a sure sign to me, and I saw these people by name. I recognized the names of the people who were producing the fear for the United Nations vis-a-vis climate change. I saw them by name, switching over to this new narrative, right? That was epic. So since then, you've seen the struggle to maintain climate change as a narrative is getting weaker and weaker as every day goes by. At this point now, the fear, the biggest fear that they have is all the dead bodies that could result from COVID or some other pandemic.
Mm-hmm. So, which is why
climate change,
which is why you see them strengthening the World Health Organization, which is under the direct control of the United Nations.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Remember, climate change never produced any dead bodies.
No,
it was all fear that something is going to happen in the future, but they never produced any dead bodies. Well, COVID took care of that problem.
Yeah, and World War III would do it. Cyber attacks would do it. Biological warfare would do it. World War III would do it. There's a lot of things, and those are all in play right now, right? Look at a little bit more of this, the agenda, their vision, your future, which Patrick Wood is in. Here we go. Watch a little more of this.
Institutions, banking, education, and global politics. The Rockefellers always believed in world governance. In the 1950s, their Special Studies Project report declared,
"The UN stands finally as a symbol of the world order that will one day be built."
In 1973, David Rockefeller co-founded a non-governmental organization which still carries international power today, the Trilateral Commission. Its stated objectives revived technocracy and in turn planted the seeds of the UN's Sustainable Development Agenda.
They said at the time that they were going to create a new international economic order. It was all over the literature. The goal of the new international economic order was not to get richer in the sense of money. They knew even back then that eventually the fiat currency system of the world was going to disintegrate. So the goal became to actually capture the physical resources of the world. All wealth historically has come out of the ground. They wanted to take away everything that they could possibly take away from the nation states of the world and from private individuals of the world and stuff it into the global common trust where they would administrate it and they would be the ones getting licenses for the resources to turn around and make stuff.
The financial kingpins have long seen themselves as masters of the universe, manipulating global affairs through institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Is Agenda 2030 the defining act for complete control? And how significant was the global response to COVID-19?
As the world builds back from COVID-19, we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make investments that will strengthen the economy and improve public health, and fight climate change for generations to come.
One might ask why the UN needs a multi-billionaire finance and media player as a special envoy, or why Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, who called for a new global monetary system, is the UN's special envoy for climate action and finance. And then there's Larry Fink, the boss of BlackRock, the world's largest asset management company. He's a board member of the World Economic Forum, and as we'll see, has driven the UN's goals through investment strategies for the past 20 years. All three are principles of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, a partnership with the UN. With the green economy worth trillions to corporations and investors alike, it's hard not to see a conflict of interests. Are the bankers raising money to achieve United Nations goals? Or are the goals a Trojan horse to change the world's financial control systems?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. And isn't it interesting? Mark Carney is now the Prime Minister of Canada, correct, Patrick?
That's right.
So you got a major player set up to help us help them push the North American Union. I really think that's where we're going. I think we're the only broadcast. I think we're the only broadcast explaining the Hegelian dialectic process, thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, the conflict, the change comes from the conflict, and that what's going on in LA and about to spread around the world, around the country, and it's in other places as well, by the way. You're seeing it in other parts of the world this week where people are rioting over the immigrants. So, UK has seen some of this too in the last few months. People are sick of this, all right? And this was all done on purpose. Spreading all these people all over the world to create this chaos was all done deliberately on purpose. So what is a solution? Biometric everybody and get them under control, right? And then by doing that, they've also destroyed the Western cultures. They've so flooded those countries that they're losing their culture. We're losing our culture here in America very, very quickly. You go to Minneapolis, it doesn't look like a Norwegian, Scandinavian state that I once lived in. It looks like the Middle East, right? This is the case all over the country. But what's going on in California, and I think one of the few people explaining this, what's going on in California and all the Mexican flags, who is getting them to all wave those Mexican flags? Why are they not waving the Palestinian flags? Why was it not the Black Lives Matter flag? Now all of a sudden it's the Mexican flag. Why? Why? Well, because it's about immigration. Yes, but who sparked all this, had the signs already ready to go, and funded it with everybody running to the street when they were told to? Because the narrative is this conflict between Mexico and America. And you've got the president of the Senate of Mexico saying, well, we actually own all these states anyway. You guys stole it from us. You've got the president of Mexico encouraging these things. She's being called out in the Oval Office by the Secretary of Homeland Security, standing next to the Resolute desk yesterday. This seems awfully scripted now, and for there to be some kind of way to out of the chaos bring a North American Union. Am I on the right track?
I think so. And don't forget the dump trucks of bricks and rocks that have been delivered to those protesters in L.A. They just showed up on the street magically, just in time for the protesters to pick them up and start throwing them at the police.
Yes.
As they were waving their flags, of course. Somebody had to pay for those dump trucks and the rocks and the bricks and whatever. And somehow they just, they get a free pass. Well, you can see the piles of rocks, in fact, but you don't see the license plates of the trucks that came and dumped them in the first place, right? This is very, very suspicious.
We're also, by the way, being told that there are more and more folks that are queuing up. They're queuing up. This is from Hernando RC, who I've interviewed several times. Hernando RC, he writes this. Let's see here. Let's see. Breaking news. This clip is not from last year. It's from this past week. There are reportedly hundreds of thousands of migrants that are scattered all over Mexico, waiting for the signal to surge our borders again. These dirty international non-government organizations are still being funded and operating like a business as usual. Something is brewing up there. The left still have their crosshairs on removing Trump by any means necessary, and then it goes on from there. But the reality is we've got video footage from Hernando RC. If you guys can come back to me. And I want to play some of that for you real quick. Here we go.
Reporting live from Tapachula, Texas. When you hear people like Kristi Noem telling us that the border is closed, and you're taking a look at what I'm showing you guys right here, does this look like the Mexico border's closed? Does this look like the Mexican president is trying to slow down the flow of immigration? America, wake up. There is a tsunami of migrants just over our border, waiting to invade, waiting for President Trump to be removed from office, waiting for this regime change operation to take place so that they can install the next Rhino sleazebag sellout who's going to open the floodgates, and the gates of hell are going to open upon our country. You should pray that President Trump survives this regime change that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are carrying out, because if they do not, this is what's coming, America. Wake up.
There we go. Thoughts, please?
There you go. There's nothing to say. It's stunning.
Yep. Technocracy.news, technocracy.news, the Hegelian dialectic. Folks, don't be distracted by the game on the ground. Look at what's going on up above. Read their papers, their reports, and how they are navigating people with emotion and fear. Brainwashing, emotion and fear. The Tavistock Institute, it's all in my documentary, Brainwashed America, Part 1 and 2. And it's also at technocracy.news, technocracy.news. As always, Patrick, thank you for being with us.
You bet. Thank you.
We'll be right back after this break.
Better science leads to better outcomes. So by understanding the science in much more intimate detail, delivering a value product that is so different from anybody else.
So when we're stepping outside into seasonal changes, low humidity, sunlight, pollution, all of these things get communicated as stress on the top layer of skin that produces free radicals, and they're bad news for collagen networks. They're going to break down the collagen network and collapse that beautiful tensile strength of your skin. And so that's how we end up with fine lines and wrinkles. Bella Grace is really an elevated formula.
Better than the competition for very obvious reasons. First of all, we're delivering great collagen. We're delivering Verisol, which is the world's most studied form of collagen. So we're starting at a foundation that's really top notch.
So here is a lady today. She's taking the elixir, arthritis in her hands. She could not close her hands and make a fist. But after now being on the elixir, now she can.
The real breakthrough discovery, particularly with the cat's claw, it's a switch that regulates genes. There's thousands of genes that are involved in that inflammation process. When you have chronic inflammation, the problem is the switch is on and it's not being turned off. And so what's happening with the cat's claw is that it removes that little protein switch off your DNA, and the genes go back to a dormant state, and you go back to being, well, really healthy.
When at first we wanted to just have an amazing collagen ingestible product to be able to set the skin up so that my wife, Christina, could come behind that with incredible skincare. And that's exactly what we're still doing. What we weren't anticipating was the magnitude and just the vast amount of benefits that this elixir was going to do for people. Testimonies started flooding back in. About probably 30% of the testimonies were about hair, skin, and nails. The others were about people being able to walk up their stairs again, people being able to open their hands in the morning without having to do heat therapy, people being able to sleep better, athletes before and after recovery, and the energy levels that people were having. So we realized that this is so much more than just a collagen ingestible product, which it certainly is that at the highest of levels. We've even had so many people in the health and wellness world say this is legitimately, Brian, the number one, the best health and wellness product that's ever been introduced. And I would say probably the only negative here with Bella Grace and this elixir is that it sounds too good to be true, but it really is true.
Bella Grace Elixir, a scientific breakthrough with over 80 clinical trials. Visit melissahousebg.com to discover Bella Grace Elixir and the full range of Bella Grace products.
Joining me now is Alex Newman. He is one that has been tracking globalism and all that's happening economically, and so many topics we talk about with him. But tonight I want to focus in on what we've really been dealing with, and that is the Hegelian dialectic process. Thesis and antithesis. Idea, opposite idea. They fight, they fight, they fight. Because, as you know, I believe what we're seeing in California is a manufactured crisis. The question is, what will the solution be? And I believe today, or yesterday, it's come out today, the president of the Senate in Mexico spilled the beans. He's like, hey, well, we're going to build the wall, remember? And we're going to take in Texas and Arizona and Utah and California. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, this fits with the whole idea of a North American Union. President Trump's already proposed Canada as a 51st state, maybe grabbing in Mexico, Greenland. Sounds like to me, this is where we're headed. Remember George W. Bush and the president of Mexico at the time, Vicente Fox, were talking about it. Even the Amero, he said, was something to Larry King, he said, is down the road. So is this all being orchestrated and you need a good crisis to get it done? Let's continue that theme tonight. Alex, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Here. Thanks for having me, Brannon.
So what do you make of this? I think these Mexican flags waving, the president of Mexico is encouraging this. Now the president of the Senate saying, well, we'll build the wall. We'll just take over Arizona and Utah and New Mexico and California. It's all ours anyway. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. We were proposed with the idea of Canada as a 51st state, where there was talk of a North American Union for years. President Trump seemed to be kind of saying things that make us think that maybe he was thinking about that. And now we have the chaos. And as I've been saying to people like Patrick Wood, maybe the goal here is you want to be able to keep your Hispanic friends here, the kids that go to your kids' schools, you go to church with. Maybe some of you have a housekeeper who've been with the family. No, they don't have to go. We just need to do the biometrics, 16.9, the goal of Agenda 21. And let's get everybody a biometric, and let's back our currency, have a common North American currency. The economic crisis is here. We've got all kinds of things going on. We just need the biometric, and voila! Palantir shows up at just the right time to help us have a file on every American. I don't know about you. To me, this seems highly orchestrated. What say you?
There's no question it's highly orchestrated, Brannon. You and I both know that. You can see this from a mile away if you know what to look for. The protests are, of course, very carefully managed. They are controlled behind the scenes by very powerful players. You look at the groups that are organizing this. They've got the usual suspects funding them, from Soros and Rockefeller and this pro-communist China gazillionaire that Trevor Loudon was just talking about with you recently. So these are very carefully orchestrated scenes. And the North American Union agenda is very real and very much alive. Because you were talking about Mexico, I'll chime in here. I grew up in Mexico, in Latin America. I spent more time living in Mexico than any other place in the world. And half of the day I was in the Mexican section of a French school. And so I had Mexican teachers. I can tell you that children in Mexico are absolutely taught to believe that evil gringos invaded Mexico, killed their niños héroes, their heroic boys, and then stole all of their land. Now, of course, that's not the truth. The truth is we fought a war with Mexico. They ceded that territory that includes California, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, even parts of Wyoming. They ceded that as part of this treaty. We paid them a huge amount of money. It was almost totally uninhabited at the time. And so the Mexicans are lied to, but they are conditioned to believe from the time they're little kids that the evil gringos, myself included, by the way, my teacher always made a point to point out that I was a gringo, that we came and stole their land and killed their people. And they are very resentful of that to this day. Mexicans, of course, are very patriotic, kind of like Americans used to be. So absolutely dangerous agenda that's happening here. And the chaos is always used by these evildoers to advance their agenda. And that's what we're going to see here. I think the North American Union agenda is one of the objectives. I think forcing Trump to respond in a way that they can frame as dictatorial is another part of this. They want Trump to look like a dictator, and they need something to cause him to do that. This looks like it's being set up as a perfect opportunity for that. It'll also, unfortunately, I think, set the precedent for the President of the United States to deploy the U.S. military against conservatives and Republicans. This talk of arresting Governor Newsom, I think, is very dangerous. And I think, if possible, they would like to see two different things that seem contradictory happen at the same time. Kind of a breakup of the United States where California goes its own way, and we see this governor saying, oh, we're not going to pay you your taxes, and almost behaving like a Confederate. And then we see Trump trying to preserve the Union. If they could break apart the Union of United States and then merge us all back together into a North American Union, the amount of chaos that would result would enable a much more comprehensive response, shall we say, from the globalists. And it's not a partisan agenda. In fact, we have the WikiLeaks documents from 2007. Thankful to WikiLeaks for releasing those, where George Bush's ambassador, Paul Cellucci, I think was his name, in Ottawa, was plotting with the Canadians how to bypass our constitutions so they could merge us into a North American Union. And they talked about the possibility of a North American Parliament, a North American currency. They tricked Trump, I believe, in the first administration to sign the USMCA, which kind of laid the groundwork for massively expanding the power of these North American tribunals, these North American bureaucracies. So we're in the middle of what the World Economic Forum described as a polycrisis. It will get worse, and they hope to use it for the purpose of taking out our sovereignty and fundamentally transforming our society.
Now, very well said, as always, Alex. Now, here is, let me show you this here. This is the president of the Senate of Mexico. Look at this here. Here he has his map he's holding up. So there you go. He's like, yeah, we'll build the wall. We told Trump we'll build the wall, and here's how it's going to go. We're taking all this back. So the art of the deal, if you will. Is this not again how the globalists are doing the art of the deal? Whoa, we don't want you taking that back, but maybe we could come up with something where we just all are three happy countries. And look at this. You have the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who is so big in the UN and has been so involved in so many of those global issues. He just happens to show up as the president or as the Prime Minister of Canada at just the right time. I mean, it all just seems like pieces on a chessboard. But here's my concern. I think President Trump has no clue what we're talking about. Zero. He didn't even know.
You're right, Brannon.
He did not even know the drones had attacked President Putin's plane. The media had to tell him. He didn't seem to know that Zelensky's country was going to, let those drones out and attack Russia's plane sitting on the tarmac. He didn't seem to know that in advance, which tells me this guy is not getting what he needs. He needs to call you and me in. He needs to call you, me, Trevor Loudon. There's a whole group of us he could call in, make his kitchen cabinet, and we could tell him about all of this, because I've been doing this 35 years. You've been doing it a lot of years. Trevor's been doing it a lot of years. He does not realize. I mean, they set him up with COVID. I'm sorry. They did.
Absolutely.
And they're doing it again.
Yep.
But on a different way. What say you?
I think you're exactly right, Brannon. And it's unfortunate. Our mutual friend, General Flynn, put out a statement a few days ago where he warned about the deep state within the U.S. government that was trying to... I saw that. With Russia, right? They're trying to foment a third world war, which you and I, of course, have been warning about as long as I remember knowing you. Here we are, closer than ever before. And you're right, Trump is not getting this information. There are gatekeepers who are controlling access to him. Now, during the first administration, I was contacted by one of his senior advisors, and I was asked to prepare a memo about the dangers of this U.S., Mexico, Canada agreement. And I happily did so. I was told the president read it, but he did it anyway. And I think that's because he was being told, and I don't know for sure, but I think that's because he was being told, yeah, there's those concerns, but this is going to be great for American farmers. It's going to be great for American manufacturers. It's going to be great for the U.S. economy. Everybody's going to give you all kinds of great credit. So he fell for that one, which was very unfortunate. I think what's happening now is he's got people in key positions that are not telling him the whole context. Mike Waltz, I think, was a really good example of this. I cried foul immediately when Mike Waltz was named as National Security Advisor. The guy has been involved with the Council on Foreign Relations for years. His wife is a member of the CFR and, of course, the World Economic Forum for good measure. This is the worst kind of person to put in charge of the National Security Council. And some of his lackeys are still there, by the way, even though he's been demoted to go, hang out at the UN. Some of his people are still there. So he's got people like this around him to this day that are controlling what information he has access to. And without understanding the big picture, he becomes much more susceptible to these kinds of manipulations. And I think they could be setting him up for a disaster in California. If he deploys the Marines and the Marines get put into a situation where they have to fire in self-defense, That will be on the front page of every newspaper around the world. The headline will be Trump the dictator deploys the military to shoot innocent civilians on the streets of Los Angeles. They will have gotten exactly what they wanted. And then, of course, they can continue down this road. And again, it'll set the precedent for the next time we have a deep state Democrat puppet in the White House to use any means necessary to silence what would be actually generally peaceful conservative resistance to federal power grabs.
He's walking right into a trap.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
100% agree. Now, look at this. He tweets out today, our deal with China is done, subject to final approval with President Xi and me, full of magnets, and any necessary rare earths will be supplied up front by China. Now, let me just stop there. I think it's 2010. I started doing radio saying, watch as they try to back the world's currencies with hard assets like land. This is why the federal government's going to start grabbing more and more and more and more land. And of course, now that's what everyone's talking about, right? Well, it wasn't hard to figure out because you got to have hard assets. What's the Bible say is real wealth? Land, cattle, right? Houses, gold, silver. So it made sense. Grab the land, you got the minerals, back your currency, hard asset. Otherwise, people aren't going to trust it. So it seems like he's cutting deals with countries to grab more minerals. So he's clearly on a path of trying to figure out some way to shore up the American dollar that's collapsing. So he's got so many things on his plate. This is one reason why I think he's so easily distracted and led down a path. You and I both have been at, different times in our life where we have so much going on, so much coming at us, that at some point you start having to delegate more and more and more and more. And then at some point you look around and you say, I don't have as much control as I used to over my own destination, my own organization, where I'm going, because I have so much going on and so many people doing other things that you end up just being briefed and told what's happening, or maybe not told, or you find out later, did you really do that? Did you say that? Did you agree to that? Oh, no. And then, so can you imagine, even if on a small scale, you and I have experienced that, many in our audience who run organizations or companies know what I'm talking about, or a large family. Or a volunteer organization of some kind. You have a big event that you're planning, a tournament or fundraiser. But imagine that now on steroids as president. It's not hard. You got everybody coming at you. You got to be controlled. You can't have everyone blowing your phone up. You've got to have order. So all of these structures are put in place for a president that make him very isolated. So he doesn't realize maybe what's coming. But he also, at the same time, realizes the major things that are coming. And so he starts trying to repair the collapse of the economy because he was running on not going to war and a good economy. So now he's cutting a deal with China. We're going to get minerals. He's got a minerals deal now with Zelensky, which really means now some kind of 10-year security agreement with Ukraine. And that's going to be weird because if they keep pushing this in the NATO, they're going to drive us to war, and we're going to be obligated to jump in, and then we're off to World War III. But then the other thing about this tweet that concerns me, we will provide to China what was already agreed to, including Chinese students using our colleges and universities. I don't like that. We don't need the Chi-Com students over here as spies and stealing intellectual property.
Exactly.
I don't agree with this at all. Do you?
I do not at all. You just hit the nail on the head. Not all, but the majority of Chinese students who are coming to the United States to study are here. They are actively cooperating with the intelligence agencies. They are actively stealing some of our most advanced research that we American taxpayers are paying for. It's a total disaster, and Trump needs to understand that. I know he's trying to make a good deal with the Chi-Coms here. They've really got him in a catch-22, Brannon, and I think that was their plan all along. He doesn't really have any good options, and it's the same with the situation in California right now. You cannot allow a bunch of Marxist revolutionary terrorists to burn down cities, to loot businesses, to burn cars, to attack law enforcement. That's obviously unacceptable. They're trying to foment a revolution, and I suspect it'll probably get bigger by this weekend with all these protests set for all over the country. At the same time, if you react in an improper way, you're going to give them exactly what they want. A lot of the people behind the scenes, not the dummies, the cannon fodder that are out there protesting. They don't know any better. They're probably many of them being paid. They're being told that you got to resist the fascists. They don't understand that they're being used as pawns here. But the people behind the scenes understand full well. They want bloodshed. They want terrible pictures to come out of Trump using the U.S. military to suppress these really very dangerous riots, these dangerous revolutionary movements. It's the same situation we're dealing with on China here. They want to box them into a corner where there are no good options. If you totally cut off all trade with China immediately, you collapse the economy. If you continue allowing this situation where the communist Chinese are preparing for war against us as we speak, using our technology, using spies all over our country, you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. So Trump has got to bring some good advisors around whom will understand these things. I hope he'll pick up the phone and contact General Flynn. He ought to call you. He ought to call Trevor Loudon. He ought to call Patrick. He ought to call a lot of these people who know what's going on here for advice, because he's not getting good advice, unfortunately, right now from some of the people around him.
Alex Newman, he is at libertysentinel.org. We're going to take just a few more minutes with him after this break. libertysentinel.org. Of course, folks, you can support us by simply going to worldviewtube.com/sponsors. worldviewtube.com/sponsors. And of course, our foundation is one of the greatest ways you can support us. worldviewfoundation.com. worldviewfoundation.com. Think of us as your Christian worldview alternative to national public radio and television. Difference is we don't get government money. We're supported by Christians and patriots just like you to keep pushing out free educational and Christian worldview programming, including our Sunday night church service. We'll be right back.
True beauty isn't applied. It's nourished from within. Bella Grace Elixir, a luxurious, scientifically crafted blend designed to restore radiance, vitality, and strength at a cellular level. At the heart of Bella Grace Elixir lies cat's claw, a powerful herb from the Amazon known for its ability to control inflammation and protect collagen. With Verisol collagen peptides, it goes beyond the surface, stimulating your body's natural collagen production to reduce fine lines, improve skin elasticity, and promote real, visible change. Bella Grace Elixir doesn't stop at collagen. It includes astaxanthin, one of nature's most powerful antioxidants. 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, astaxanthin protects your skin from harmful UV rays and environmental stress, while locking in hydration and promoting a radiant, youthful glow. Experience the power of nature with Bella Grace Elixir at melissahousebg.com. Discover the science behind Bella Grace Elixir at melissahousebg.com. Read powerful testimonials from doctors and real customers who've experienced life-changing results, and explore other wellness products from Bella Grace. Bella Grace Elixir is more than just a product. It's a solution. Visit melissahousebg.com today.
Looking for a trusted source to understand today's world through a Christian worldview? Worldview Tube is built on the 35 years of worldview books, columns, research, and high-profile interviews of Brannon Howse. Want to know more about Worldview Tube, its founder, history, team, and mission? Visit worldviewtube.com/about. That's worldviewtube.com/about. Worldview Tube is your source for understanding the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
All right, joining me now is, again, Alex Newman. Alex, what do you think is going to happen this Saturday, June 14th? Do you think, the website nokings.org, do you think anything's going to happen?
I don't know. I think the revolutionaries and the gazillionaires behind the revolutionaries would love for something to happen. They would love to see some of these agitators throw a brick at a policeman and have a policeman pull out a firearm and shoot them. They would absolutely love it. It would be the perfect propaganda tool, the perfect rallying cry to spark a revolutionary movement. I have said, and we've talked about it many times on your show, Brannon, they want a civil war in this country. They want Americans to murder each other. And an incident like that would be absolutely a perfect catalyst for what they're hoping to do. So I would urge people to be very, very careful. I would urge people to pray. And I would urge people not to fall for the provocations, especially police officers. A lot of these guys are paid provocateurs. They are highly trained. They've gone through classes on how to provoke exactly the kind of response that they want. Don't get tricked into doing what they want. It's very, very dangerous. This is a powder keg. And you and I have also talked, Brannon, about the foreign agents that are on our soil right now. Some of them will be at these things. Operatives for the CCP, special forces, Venezuelan intelligence, Cuban intelligence, looking for a spark to start a real revolution here. So I think it's very dangerous. No guarantee that something will happen, but a very, very dangerous situation that I think we all need to be paying attention to.
So in our remaining moments here, Alex, I asked Michael Yon this last night. Is this the beginning of a civil war or the attempt at a civil war in America? Or is this the beginning of World War III in a more open way, hitting our shores? I already think World War III is underway. I already think we've seen gray terror in America, which is what countries do to you before you go to war. They start attacking your infrastructure. They start attacking your food supply. I read today where, I read at worldviewreport.com, your daily aggregated news site. I put up an article today where a food company, a supplier of food, here it goes, temporary disruption, cyber attack on Whole Food suppliers sparks shortages in the stores. I mean, this is how easy it is, folks, for the grocery stores to start going bare. The food supplier can't fill orders because they've had a cyber attack. So one of the largest distributors of food can't get food to the stores. So I think there's been a lot of gray terror going on the last few years. So I think in some sense, the World War III has already started. It's already going on in a sense in America, certainly the information warfare, the cyber warfare, the economic warfare. But is this attempt at a civil war part of World War III, or is it a separate issue? Because I think they're the same game. To create civil war in America, to distract America, and particularly if President Trump has to call out the troops all over the place. Because, wait a minute, we need our troops to secure us. Right, they shouldn't be going all over the world. But if you then have a problem going to the defense of Taiwan, should we do that? Well, good luck. The troops are distracted in America. I mean, this seems like a perfect formula they're setting up. And I don't know if you know this, but we carried an article last night that since Biden came into office, from Biden till now, 4.5 years, the American population has lost half of our police forces. They've walked off the job, half. I mean, everything is lining up for the enemies of America.
It is. And I don't think you can understand the one without the other. I think the civil war that they are trying to provoke in the United States is actually a part of the Third World War that they hope will emerge, that they hope will produce a fundamentally restructured global order, what they call a multipolar order. First, you have to take down the unipolar power, that being the United States. And between World War III, with China and Russia, with the Marxists, with the Islamists, and a domestic civil war that is intimately intertwined with that mess, what will emerge on the other side is a new world order with a significantly diminished United States, a world divided up into regional powers. And I think that's where they're going with this, Brannon. I don't think their agenda is necessarily going to succeed, but that's what they want. And we have to be very careful. And I think, folks, now would be a really good time to get in prayer. Would be a good time to read your Bible, and would be a good time to get involved before it's too late.
Indeed, it would be. So final question. Global warming. I know they were trying to run this whole thing on global warming. People aren't buying that. So what is going to be the scare tactic they use to get people to surrender their rights? Is it terrorism? Is it economic collapse, hyperinflation? Is it civil war in the country? Is it pandemics, biological weapons, the threat of World War III? I can't really think they want to use nuclear weapons. That doesn't seem like that's going to benefit anybody. But maybe a cyber attack on a grid going down for a few weeks. Or is it all the above? Do you see these things being used as the way to get people to say, we've got to go to some way in which we can eliminate wars? So let's start creating unions and North American Parliament, a North American currency, and you have 10 regions that work with 10, presidents of each union, which sounds just like out of Daniel chapter 7, and we see this all over the book of Revelation, chapter 13, all over the place. Have they given up on the global warming and they're going to go with the multi-prong approach?
Well, the World Economic Forum a couple of years ago gave a very cryptic post on its website talking about the prospect of a poly-crisis. And I think all of those things you just listed are fair game. Prepare for economic chaos, military chaos, public health chaos, environmental chaos, spills, crashes of infrastructure, cyber pandemic, as Klaus Schwab called it. I think we're staring down the barrel of all of those simultaneously. So the fear that people experienced during COVID, multiply that by 100. People will be willing to surrender their rights, surrender their freedom, whatever it takes to make this craziness stop. And I think that's what they have been planning for a very long time. So now would be a good time, folks, to be spiritually prepared and physically prepared for what's coming. And I really appreciate you having me on the program, Brannon. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Alex Newman checking in tonight, folks. LibertySentinel.org, LibertySentinel.org. So much happening in the world, folks, right? There's so much going on. Here we go. Here's another headline. U.S. rethinks support for independent Palestinian state. The U.S. no longer fully supports an independent Palestinian state, says Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel. Well, I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. We'll see where that goes. What else is in the news? Well, there is also talk of maybe a strike by Israel on Iran coming. We'll keep you posted on that. But supposedly, the officials, our American officials at the embassy in Baghdad, have been warned to clear out. We're getting a lot of reports tonight about that. We're going to have to follow and try to figure out what is fiction and what is fact. But I don't know, is Israel about to go it on their own? And again, what would that mean for America? So, very complicated world we live in. I'm glad I'm a Christian tonight. How about you? There was a great speech today given by Marjorie Taylor Greene on one of the individuals that's behind supposedly a billionaire or close to it behind a lot of these groups that are involved in the chaos in California. You want to hear what Marjorie Taylor Greene had to say today? It was really good. Watch and listen to this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is a unifying belief of the left, a hatred of America and Western civilization. Anti-Israel extremism is frequently part of a broader anti-Western sentiment. It's why so many of the protesters at the LA anti-ICE riots are flying Palestinian flags while burning the American flag, and why Isra Hirsi, the daughter of a congresswoman who sits on Foreign Affairs, Ilhan Omar, said on her Instagram last week, from LA to Rafah, there is one common oppressor, death to the colonial empire. She also drew this connection between ICE enforcement in LA and Israel's war against Hamas. For the left, everything can be reduced to white people oppressing brown people, whether it be a BLM riot, a pro-Palestinian encampment, or an attempt to impede ICE from enforcing federal immigration laws. These protests are all organized by the same professional left-wing activists whose intent is to cause as much civil unrest and chaos as possible. Elias Rodriguez, the man who shot and killed 2 Israeli embassy officials last month, was deeply involved in this far-left activist ecosystem. Mr. Carafano, what far-left groups was Elias Rodriguez involved with?
So you raise a really important point, which is why that the threat of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism in the United States is a bigger and broader problem, because when we look at the organizations which have supported and encouraged or discussed these—
I'm short on time, Mr. Carafano. What organizations?
So this is the Party of Socialism and Liberation.
Great.
Which has also been engaged in activities like BLM and other riots as well.
Now, would that be linked to Neville Ray Singham? Does that name ring a bell?
He is widely recognized as a major funder of the organization, and that's from Wikipedia. So.
Right. And just to go further on who Neville Ray Singham is, he's the son of a Sri Lankan immigrant and Cuban immigrant. But in 1974, he was investigated by the FBI for his ties to groups engaged against the United States interest. He was a member of a Maoist group. He's also said to be nearly a billionaire and gives his money frequently to left-wing organizations. He's even linked to the CCP. He currently lives and works in Shanghai. He shares office space with a Chinese propaganda firm focused on presenting a positive image of China to the global South. And in 2019, he started a consulting business with Chinese partners active in the propaganda apparatus of the CCP. He has provided significant funding to pro-China media outlets around the world, and he even married Jody Evans, the founder of Code Pink, in 2017. She used to be against China, but she's not anymore, and she's currently co-authoring a book titled China is Not Our Enemy. You know what's really interesting about this man is he uses the Goldman Sachs philanthropy fund. There's a lot of Americans invest their money with Goldman Sachs, but the Goldman Sachs philanthropy fund is a dark money clearinghouse to obscure his identity, Singham's identity, while facilitating the transfer of substantial sums to nonprofit. Things like the People's Forum, which received over $20 million from Singham through the Goldman Sachs Philanthropy Fund, organized anti-Israel protests across the country, and was heavily involved in the protests at Columbia and the takeover of Hamilton Mall. Singham also funds $20 million through the Goldman Sachs Philanthropy Group to the Justice and Education Fund, which provides money to pro-China media outlets around the world. And just as you mentioned, the Party of Socialism and Liberation. That's the group that's organizing these lovely events happening in LA that Democrats call mostly peaceful, but the people in LA call fiery, violent, and call a war against America. He also funded, and unbelievably, the pro-Palestinian protests around the country and on campuses, and Elias Rodriguez, the man who killed the 2 young Israeli diplomats. Singham coordinated the anti-ICE LA protest. Again, this picture just can't be shown enough. And they have been coordinating these anti-ICE protests around the world, around the country. And more to come is what the Democrats tell us. Mr. Carafano, one last question. Do you believe China is funding the war against America?
There's a lot of activity in the public record that show Chinese money is flowing into many of these organizations which have been involved in planning and organizing and supporting these activities. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Carafano. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Well, there you go. There you go, folks. But I doubt you'll see that on your mainstream corporate media tonight, mixed in with all the pictures and images of the protests and the riots and the looting and the burning. We've been talking about this for so long. Enemies, foreign and domestic, unrestricted warfare, propaganda, behavioral sciences, the Hegelian dialectic process, the Fabian window. The change comes from the conflict. The change comes from the conflict. Most people don't see these events as connected, but they are connected. So much of what's happening in the world today is absolutely connected, but most people see them as different pictures and pieces, not as one puzzle. Well, that's our job here, to help you understand the times, how to connect the dots, reason, logic, context. And then, of course, what we do so uniquely different than so many others. We then push it through the grid, the worldview of the Bible. Seems as though the stage is being set for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled, does it not? A North American Union, a regional currency, then a global currency. Oh boy, I don't know about you again. I'm so thankful I'm a Christian and can have the peace that I have because I understand that the world is not running out of control. The pieces are falling into place for the Bible to come to pass and fulfilling Bible prophecy. We'll be right back. July 6, 2005. This is Tom Harper. Man figures plankton stopped his rare cancer. We got more of a response from our viewers than anything else you and I have ever discussed.
Tom Harper, 20 years ago, he had mesothelioma, deadly lung cancer, was given weeks to live, and he just intuitively started to eat the phytoplankton out of his fish tanks because he fed the phytoplankton to his shellfish. He was a shellfish farmer. And when he went in for the surgery, the surgeon came out of the operating room and told his family, I have not ever seen anything like it. The cancer is benign. And Tom Harper lived for years. He retired in Hawaii. We're not making any claim.
Here he is in his own words.
Started on a daily routine of just taking a bit of paste, putting it in my mouth, and wash it down with a drink of water. Within about 10 to 15 days, here I am, less pain in my back. I knew that something was going on, so I just kept eating half a teaspoon of this paste a day. I was booked to go for surgery in Victoria where they were going to do what they call a talc treatment. They went in there to have a look, saw something they never seen before, took 11 sites, sent them away for biopsy. I got the news back. Everything was benign. They just did not know what to make of it. Everything was absolutely clean. And I've tried dieting all my life because I'm a diabetic. If it's a coincidence or not, I don't know. My blood sugar started dropping. My weight started falling off. Here I am, no longer requiring insulin, and I was taking 88 units a day of insulin. I can eat just about what I want in moderation, and I have no elevated sugar levels, and I feel fabulous.
People, you hear the word cancer, and they want you to be instilled with fear. Cancer is nothing but a profound failure of the immune system. And what happened with Tom Harper is the phytoplankton is microscopic. It's God's microscopic food. And the Gadatiana is the most nutritionally comprehensive strain phytoplankton in the world. David Hunter studied phytoplankton for 20 years because he worked for Tom Harper and he was there in person and witnessed Tom's recovery. It's about getting pure nutrition inside your cells. And what happens, your body balances again or goes back to homeostasis. And when your body is pH balanced or in homeostasis, disease can't grow. It is literally microscopic, pure single cell plant food with protein and omega-3 fatty acids, omega-6 fatty acids, with amino acids and vitamins and minerals. 1 scoop a day. There's 90 billion plant cells in here just for everyday nutrition and energy and, cognitive support, because this is God's pure nutrition.
Go to melissahousegpa.com today. Discover the science and learn more about the wonderful benefits of Gadatana phytoplankton. That's melissahousegpa.com. melissahousegpa.com.
Joining me now is JC Lightgab. She's a first-time guest. And then we're going to be joined by a favorite, Dr. Mark Miller. Remember Dr. Mark Miller, right? Talking about Bella Grace and all those great products and things he's developed over the years. Well, he's back and he's brought us a new friend, JC Lightgab. And here she is. Here's a picture of her right here on their website. JC Lightgab is a highly respected leader in the direct sales industry and is currently leading the charge at ProSeller 8. And we're going to tell you all about that tonight. JC, welcome for the first time. Dr. Mark Miller, welcome back. I know our audience is glad to see you again as well. Glad to have both of you with us.
Delighted to be here.
Great to have you here. And welcome, JC. All right, Dr. Miller, let's talk about, you introduced me to JC. Tell me about JC and tell me about the products you've been working with her to develop.
I've known JC now for, good gracious. I try not to put the exact number on it. It's a long time. It's, probably about 17 years, 18 years. So
you met her when she was right out of college.
Yeah, exactly. And I was right out of college too. Yeah. Look, we have a long history in terms of trying to connect the dots to consumers to make their lives healthier and happier and functional and great performance. And so, I've been involved with JC's company, ProSeller for a while now, doing formulations and assisting with promotions and marketing, and she's got something to offer.
Well,
sure.
and so you've been involved in helping JC develop these products, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
Well, JC, you're working with a great guy because we sure have benefited from some of his great other products we take here. Tell us about, I know particularly 2 products we want to talk about. One, Melissa and I've talked to you quite a bit, both of you, off the air. And Melissa got the products, as always. She's got to try things. She has been looking for a really good energy drink, okay? Because she doesn't want to drink coffee all day long. So she's been looking for a really good energy drink, something that doesn't make her heart flutter, doesn't make her feel, kind of thing. And so she really likes the ProSeller 8. And so she said, let's go with this. I think this is a great product. Tell us about it and how Dr. Miller helped you develop it.
Yeah, Charge comes in two flavors, the orange or strawberry kiwi. And, Dr. Miller will get into the ingredients. But what's great about Procellerate's Charge is it's sustained energy through the day. You put a scoop with water, mix it up. For those, that take vitamins in the morning, use it to drink down your vitamins, and you will feel great all day. Now, I do say for those folks that work, at a desk, sometimes between 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you might want a second one. But then I get asked the question, well, is it going to keep me up at night? No. If you heard me say earlier, sustained energy, that's because it contains, multivitamins, and it's a healthy energy drink.
Well, we certainly don't need people drinking that garbage that's out there. A lot of it is just really bad for you, is it not, Dr. Mark Miller?
Yeah, all that sugary stuff and things like that causes all sorts of problems. And the aspect of the design here, it's not just probably energy. And I think what JC was alluding to is that in terms of mental performance, there's the physical energy, but there's also that mental performance. And one of the real critical things to promote that mental performance and stop that fatigue that you feel, that sluggishness, the fog, is the neurotransmitters they're actually precursors to that, that allow you to think. All your neurons fire appropriately. So if you think of it like muscle, when muscle runs out of fuel, then they don't work as well. And with your brain, when you're running low on your neurotransmitters, that communication between nerve cells is compromised. And so the idea is to not only produce energy as it relates to physical performance, and some of that's related to mitochondria, but also to make sure that your brain performance with these neurotransmitters is always topped up. So, yeah, if you can think better, you can do better.
Absolutely. So how long have you been working with JC on developing this, Dr. Miller?
I forget now, JC. We certainly went way back to about 2008. I'm blurry on when we started together with Procellerate, so fill it in, JC.
So I founded Procellerate, a wellness company, in 2020.
Yeah, there you go. 5 years.
All right. Let's go to the next one. The next one is, I'm going to go under shop, look under shop there, and it's Amino. Tell me about this one, the Amino Plus, Dr. Miller.
Yeah, so for those of you who are not quite sure of what amino acids are, they're the sort of building blocks of proteins. A good way to think of it is like a pearl necklace. And each of those pearls in a protein is an amino acid. And so you have different ones all strung together to make the particular protein. You can't make proteins unless you have amino acids. And so you've really got some critical ones here, some of my favorites, really. And they do a diverse arrangement of activities, actually, Brannon. It's not just making proteins. There are other things. They're very much involved in tissue repair. And there are some elements that we could pick out specifically for those. But also they make certain hormones, not all of them, but some of the ones that have an amino acid protein-like structure. They also are a precursor to some neurotransmitters. So we're getting back to the brain again and neural function as it relates to it. And interestingly, there's a component related to energy, either as secondary effects or the way mitochondria turn to amino acids to create energy under very, very specific circumstances. And that probably is the least well known of all their actions, actually, the energy component. Maybe I should explain that a little bit more. So let me just give me a few minutes to explain it. Under certain circumstances, the mitochondria, which are the organelles and cells that make ATP, your currency of energy, Normally, it will burn glucose to do just that.
Mm-hmm.
It also has the capacity to burn lipids, fats, to do just that. There are some conditions where they change their preference and they start munching on very specific amino acids, and that's during inflammation. And it's kind of a desperate act, actually. The types of amino acids that are being burnt under those circumstances are called branched chain amino acids. That's just really as a reflection of their structure. But you really don't want to be burning amino acids for energy. It's a kind of a waste. It happens during inflammation. So in inflammation, you tend to not use the glucose and you not tend to use less of the lipids. If you want a sort of analogy of why you can do it, but it's probably not the best thing to do, is say it's wintertime and you want to heat your house and you've run out of firewood to put in the fireplace. You could break down your dining room table and chairs and chuck it in the fireplace. And yeah, you'll heat the house, you know, it'll work. But was that the best idea? Could you have better options? But in inflammation, that's exactly what you do. You start using up these amino acids. And so, you know, that's part of the problem. You run short because they're being used for energy. In this particular case, for the product, the branched chain amino acids are leucine, isoleucine, and valine. They collectively called the branched chains. But there's other really important ones in there. Glutamine has a very, very important role for repair, tissue repair, particularly in the gut, because, and as you take it as a supplement, you know, that's quite important. The gut, in the process of digesting all the food, you tend to lose elements of your lining of the gut, and you want that barrier function to be very strong. So you need glutamine to make sure that when you lose a few cells as it relates to gut function, that you replace them well and you shore up that barrier function. So that's a really critical role of glutamine. It extends beyond the gut, but you know that's a very.
So tell me what people who get on the Amino Plus, what will they experience? How will it affect them?
Yeah, I think it's more of a performance aspect, and then there's a physical aspect as it relates to helping with a leaner, more functioning, more performance-orientated physique. So there's a lot of what I call gym rats, for a better term, who love them because they're certainly involved. If they make protein, then you make muscle.
Well, wait a minute. Now you're onto something that Melissa is very interested in. She's very interested in trying to, you know, she lifts weights, right? She works in her arms, and she's big into protein, and she wants muscle, obviously, not fat. So you're saying,
who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't? Right. So you're saying this is very important then to combine the amino acids and the protein work great together to help produce muscles. So if you're trying to work on shaping your arms or whatever, a guy or gal, particularly for the summer, but maybe people year round if they live in a warm climate where they're showing their arms, particularly ladies. I mean, guys, you know, depending on how you're built, may have the same problem. But ladies, as they get older and older, want to try to make sure they keep those arms looking firm, right? Right? Am I right, Lacey? Or JC? JC?
You are. And I'm glad Dr. Miller mentioned that because, you know, as a mom who does go to the gym every morning, I make sure to take my aminos in the morning because it feeds that lean muscle. And for women and men, you know, you get that lean look in your arms.
Yes.
And this product helps with that. Even if you're not in the gym and you're somebody who just goes out for a walk, aminos are important to help you with your goals when it comes to exercise.
And related to that, the combination with exercise is actually really important. Exercise is an important part of the puzzle, but you amplify that decision-making of making more protein when you combine the substrates, the amino acids, and the demand to use them to make more protein. So it's not only, strengthening and building, but also repairing in case you overdid things in the gym.
What if you're not
whatever.
working out with weights? JC just mentioned walking. What if you're like an avid walker? Is this going to help tone your legs better or what?
Absolutely. That's all part of the process of cells making better decisions. You make better decisions, you have better outcomes. So it needs to do that. And it's not just pearls in the necklace that I mentioned earlier. It's also very much involved in augmenting those decision-making processes to lay down muscle
So this
and
is
repair damage.
so this is not only doing something externally in your appearance, but it's doing stuff that's positive for you internally. Is that what I'm hearing you say, Dr. Miller?
Yeah, internally, it may be an individual cell. It may be a muscle fiber, but it could be any cell. As I mentioned, it could be, the decision-making in terms of the lining of your gut. They also, some of them form neurotransmitters, so they're essential for, brain function. And there's a lot to it. There's one other one I'd like to mention in there, taurine, which is not only supplying energy, you feel that energy from taurine, but it's also involved in lowering another metabolite that exists in the body called homocysteine. It's a breakdown of another amino acid called cysteine. Elevated levels of homocysteine are one of the key drivers and signals for cardiovascular complications, cardiovascular health. And, it was some years ago coming out of really very, very large studies that we found that homocysteine, this is from Harvard, was a very good index, a window into your cardiovascular health. And taurine is really very, very important for lowering your homocysteine levels. So, this is one of the metrics that we have for cardiovascular health. And interestingly, in preclinical studies, very difficult to do this in clinical trials, but elevated ingestion of taurine is associated with longevity in preclinical studies. So,
really?
Yeah. So you perform better, you function better, and you live longer, at least in the preclinical studies.
And your website, it says, what do amino acids do for my body? They're essential for building proteins in the body, which make up tissues like muscles, skin, hair, and nails. They also support other important functions like immune response, hormone synthesis, and can serve as an energy source as well. So these are all very good things. I want to ask you when I come back real quick, both of you. 56 years old. My wife and I, we want to keep moving. We hear a lot about the need to keep moving, walking, stretching, bending down. That's why people in other cultures that garden a lot, and you're getting down and getting back up, versus people who in their 60s and 70s start tripping, falling, breaking hips, and it's just go right straight down. But then the connection to the mind as well. On the other side of the break, don't go away. We're not changing courses. Now, we are who we are. We're committed to the truth that we are committed to. Worldview Tube is a broadcast network that I started in 2006, but it's based on my 35 years as an author and speaker and commentator. Worldview Tube is here to defend the truth of a Christian worldview. And we believe we can apply it to all areas of life, like law, science, economics, history, family, social issues, education, religion, major issues.
At worldviewtube.com, we provide news from around the globe that isn't typically covered by mainstream media. Visit worldviewtube.com to watch our experts and analysts discuss all your favorite topics on our 24/7 live stream. Explore our extensive collection of unfiltered and uncensored content from 35 years of production. Go to worldviewtube.com today. Also find us on all of these major platforms and download our Worldview Tube mobile app.
Introducing the Sentry Wellness System, the ultimate under-sink water treatment solution designed with you in mind. Say goodbye to harmful toxins and hello to water enriched with essential nutrients like calcium and magnesium. Enjoy the benefits of increased pH for on-demand alkalinity. All from a zero-waste system that fits seamlessly into your home. Installation is a breeze, taking just 15 minutes, so you can have clean, healthy, great-tasting water straight from your tap. Perfect for apartments, homes, rentals, and even RVs. Elevate your hydration and well-being with the Century Wellness System because you deserve the best in every drop.
Century H2O. Tap into wellness.
And welcome back. Glad you're with us. A few more minutes here with my two guests, JC and Dr. Mark Miller. Guys, I talked about before the break, very important that we keep moving, that we crouch down, that we garden. These things in other cultures show that those people do so much better mentally and physically. What these two products, the energy drink to give you the energy to keep moving and going, the amino acids to give you that muscle, because again, a lot of it's when you start getting weak, then JC, you start to fall down. And before you know it, you're falling down, and at certain ages, maybe you can fall down, hop right back up. But pretty quick, your muscle mass isn't what it should be. You don't have the strength it needs to be. You're falling down the stairs. You're falling in, your everyday walk. And I know people that have done this. I know people. I'm not going to name names, but I know people. My wife and I talk about them, and we say, they should have been moving. They should have been out walking. They were sitting too much. They weren't active enough. And it's impacting them mentally, Alzheimer's, dementia, and it's impacted them physically, mentally and physically. Can you speak to this before we let Dr. Miller do the same?
A special name. We love to hand out names to things. Usually they involve some Latin or Greek or something, just so it sounds impressive, but it's part of the communication, at least in the biomedical field. And the term that you're referring to is sarcopenia. And that is the loss of muscle mass with age. And there's two key drivers to prevent sarcopenia. And one of them you've talked about already, which is exercise. And it doesn't have to be ridiculously strenuous. But the more that you do it in a sustained, constant manner, the benefits that you'll have. And that comes out in the physical aspects of maintaining healthier muscle mass, which is quite critical. And also in terms of mental performance. So these two elements, the charge, the energy drink charge, as well as the Amino Plus, address that. And they support other elements, as we discussed, the cardiovascular system, immunity, tissue repair. All of these elements come together, as well as, with the charge, you make better mental decisions because you're not only promoting energy, you're making mental performance and neurological aspects, how nerves talk to each other, optimize, and you run out. So it's a big deal. Look, hip fractures are a massive determinant for reduction in lifespan because people fall over. And that can be such a constraint that they don't live well beyond hip fractures.
They sure don't. They sure
it certainly
don't.
happened to my mother-in-law, but
yep, same here. My mother-in-law as well. It doesn't work well. Closing comments from you, JC.
Yeah, I just would like to say, at the end of the day, it's about quality. And we don't want people to have to spend their time shopping around. And when you deliver products that have cutting edge ingredients backed by science that deliver results, you have something pretty powerful in your hands. And that's what we have here. And we have, no one better than Dr. Mark Miller, who backs the science of the products.
Well, we're crazy about science here. We love our products to have clinical trials and science behind it. And Dr. Miller's been so great about that with some of our other products. So I was so glad when he reached out to me and we began to talk about you and your products. We got to talking more about them. So I'm really glad to add you to our family of products here on the network with the science behind it. And I hope folks will go there. proseller8.com/worldview and get started on this, folks. Dr. Miller, closing comment?
Look, I try and live what I preach, so to speak. The main thing I'm doing at the moment for sport is golf. And the other day I came very close to shooting my age. I shot a 72. And anyone who knows anything about golf, shooting a score that matches your age is really very difficult. I didn't quite get there, but I will.
But you will. And you're taking your amino acids and your charge and your amino plus so you can stay active and energetic and have that muscle mass to do that long drive, right?
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of reputation at the club that I'm at, taking all the money. They're calling me the human ATM machine. So.
Oh, you're taking their money, are you?
Of course I am. What do you think I'm playing for?
Oh, wow. JC, closing comment from you.
No, I just want to say I look forward to the relationship here. And again, I take these products every morning. You know, I have 3 kids, I have 2 grandkids, and it's something that helps prevent my aging. And I couldn't imagine my life without them. And that's a huge thanks to Dr. Mark Miller for his wonderful science-backed formulations.
Yeah, we love Dr. Mark Miller, his science-backed formulas. We have had great success with them. We're glad to find out about these at proseller8.com/worldview. Guys, check it out. Another great way to support your health and us at the same time. Thank you, JC. Thank you, Dr. Mark Miller. Appreciate you guys being with us.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Look forward to having you guys back. All right, guys, before we go tonight, I really need your support. What a show tonight. Will you go there? worldviewtube.com/sponsors. worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Bella Grace, Gatatana, Worldview Water, it's all there. Swish for Life, Numi, Gatatana, all of it. It's there. We need your support. And these are great ways to support your health at the same time. But of course, one of the most powerful ways you can support us is by simply going to worldviewfoundation.com. worldviewfoundation.com. Remember, we're pushing it all out for free. We could put all of this behind a paywall, including this 24 stream. But we don't. It's out here. And then all of it will be posted up tomorrow as individual segments for you to share with your family and friends or watch again. All brought to you in part by our foundation, which serves to help people understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. Also sponsors our Sunday night church service where I'm teaching through the book of Revelation. Revelation chapter 17 is what we're on right now. You'll find that Sunday night lesson at worldviewtube.com right now as well. But again, you help make it all possible. Worldviewfoundation.com. Roll the music. Let's call it a night. Hey, don't forget to order your pack of free business cards. One of our listeners in LA told my wife the other night, I gave one of your business cards to a Los Angeles police officer. I handed him a card, said, hey, you might want to listen to this network. So we hope some of the LAPD guys are listening, watching. I think most of us tonight are thinking of you guys, praying for your safety and that of your colleagues as you try to do what the Bible says is a job ordained by God. Make a stable and just society, right? So pray for America's police officers and sheriffs out on the streets tonight. But I hope you would take the time to order those cards, pass them out to your police officers and sheriffs and city council members and family and friends. Help them too understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview. Will you? Worldviewstore.com. Get your free pack. May God save America. Take care.
Responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon Howse.
And welcome. Glad you are with us. Joining me today is going to be Patrick Wood. Let's talk about the Hegelian dialectic process. Oh, no, don't let the eyes roll back in your head here. Hegelian dialectic process, conflict, that's all it means. Thesis and antithesis, idea, opposite idea, conflicting with each other in order to bring about a third way or a third option. In other words, to get the people to go where they otherwise would never go. What is World War III really all about? Is it about regime change? Probably. Getting rid of Putin, who doesn't want to go along with all the New World Order, LGBTQ, green agenda? Probably. Is it also about nation building? A region? Minerals? President Trump came out today with a tweet that he's firmed up a deal with China. Apparently it has to do with minerals from China up front. So much seems to be about getting hard assets. was it about 2010 when I did the radio show telling you guys I thought we were headed toward hard assets, land, and what's under the land to be the basis for a global currency, or at least something to back up our own currency, which is why the federal government was taking up so much federal state land and federalizing it. 2010, I think it was, we looked up a few weeks ago, that radio show in our vault. It doesn't take a lot to know that. You just got to be thinking, well, this fiat currency eventually is going to implode, so you got to go to something, but no one's going to trust it if it doesn't have a hard backing, right? Hard assets. And now President Trump's cutting a deal with China. They're going to provide minerals up front. Is Russia in World War III, is that about them wanting to get a hold of minerals in China or in Russia, but also getting rid of Putin for regime change, for a part of maybe a different region as we go toward 10 world regions as promoted by the European Commission, the Club of Rome, the UN? Isn't that what Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 has been about? Grabbing up all the world's resources in the name of environmentalism. So the people who want